I'm Emily, I'm 25, and my whole life has been a battle to be believed. My family always labeled me as a dramatic, attention seeking girl who constantly cried wolf. But that 4th of July, everything changed. When my breath caught and my vision blurred, my father snapped, "Stop faking it," as I gasped for air. My Aunt Rose said I was just trying to get out of cleanup duty. No one expected that when the paramedic checked my pulse, he would shout, "Stretcher," and the room would erupt in panic. Growing up in the Walker household meant one thing: weakness was unacceptable. My father, Michael Walker, ran our home the same way he ran his construction company, with rigid expectations and no room for excuses. A tall man with permanently calloused hands and a voice that could carry across a job site, Dad was not the person you complained to, unless you wanted a lecture about real problems. From my earliest memories, whenever I was sick or hurt, I was met with skepticism rather than sympathy. When I was 7 and broke my wrist falling from the oak tree in the backyard, Dad made me wash the dishes before finally taking me to urgent care, convinced I was exaggerating. A doctor later said I was lucky to avoid permanent damage from the delay. This pattern continued throughout my childhood, sending the same message. My pain didn't matter. My experiences were less valid than everyone else's. My mother died when I was 4, leaving Dad to raise me and my younger sister Sarah alone. Perhaps that explained his harshness, but it never excused it. Mom had been the buffer between his stern pragmatism and our childhood vulnerabilities. Without her, we were left exposed to his unfiltered judgment.
Aunt Rose, his sister, was cut from the same cloth. A woman with perfectly coiffed hair who never arrived at a family gathering without a critical comment disguised as concern. "Auntie, are you sure you should be eating that?" Or, "That outfit is certainly a bold choice." She appointed herself my female role model after Mom died, but her guidance mostly consisted of criticism wrapped in a thin veneer of helpfulness. The only person who ever believed me was Sarah. 3 years younger, she somehow escaped the dramatic label that had been attached to me. When I had migraines that left me vomiting in the bathroom, Sarah would silently bring me water and sit with me in the dark. When Dad accused me of faking to skip school, she would quietly defend me, though it rarely made a difference. By 16, I had internalized their dismissal so deeply that I began to doubt my own sensations. Maybe I really was being dramatic. Maybe normal people didn't feel pain the way I did. I stopped mentioning when I felt unwell, pushing through fevers and injuries with stubborn determination. This only reinforced their belief that my previous complaints had been exaggerations. When I was accepted to the state university 300 miles from home, it felt like a prison break. For 4 years, I built a life where people took me at my word. My roommate, Chloe, never questioned me when I said I needed a quiet day because of a migraine. Professors granted extensions when I was genuinely sick. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be believed, to have my experiences validated instead of dismissed. After graduation, I found a job at a marketing firm in the city and vowed never to return home. I called on holidays, visited twice a year with a carefully planned exit strategy, and built a life separate from the family that had made me doubt my own reality. Then, the economic downturn hit. Our firm lost 3 major clients in a single month. As one of the newest hires, I was among the first to be laid off. With student loans and big city rent, my savings vanished alarmingly fast. After 3 months of fruitless job hunting, I faced the unthinkable: moving back to my hometown. Dad offered me the apartment above the garage, rent-free, until I got back on my feet. Sarah, now a nurse at the local hospital, seemed genuinely happy to have me back. Even Aunt Rose hinted at connections at her country club who might be hiring. Swallowing my pride, I packed up my apartment and drove back to the place I had so desperately escaped. The 4th of July celebration was an annual family tradition. The Walkers, along with various aunts, uncles, and cousins, would gather at our house for a barbecue before watching the fireworks from our backyard, which overlooked the town park. This year, with me back home, Dad made it clear he expected me to take over the hosting duties that had once been my mother's. "It's time you pulled your weight," he said. So, I spent the week before the holiday cleaning the house, planning a menu, and shopping for supplies, all while continuing my increasingly desperate job search. The pressure to create a perfect evening was immense. I knew any flaw would be attributed to my supposed incompetence, not the impossible standards. Little did I know that this family gathering would become a turning point not only in how my family saw me, but in whether I would survive at all. The first warning sign came 3 days before the 4th of July. I woke up unusually tired, despite having slept nearly 9 hours. My body felt heavy, as if I were moving underwater, and climbing the stairs to the kitchen left me winded. "You're out of shape," I told myself, repeating the words I'd heard countless times from my father. I ignored the strange fatigue and focused on my to-do list. Later, while vacuuming the living room, I had to stop twice to catch my breath. A dull ache had settled in my right calf, but I dismissed it as a muscle strain from all the cleaning. For years, I had learned to ignore my body's signals, to avoid being labeled dramatic. That evening, I called Chloe, my best friend from college. "You sound awful," she said, after I coughed my way through an update on my job search. "Thanks," I laughed, trying to ignore the strange tightness in my chest. "Just tired from cleaning." "Your dad could hire cleaners with what he makes," Chloe pointed out. "He just wants to keep you busy so you feel indebted." "Maybe," I admitted. "But what choice do I have right now?" "Just be careful, Em," she said, her voice softening. "You know how you get when you're back there, ignoring your body's signals." I promised her I would rest. But instead, I stayed up until midnight prepping food for the party. The next morning, the fatigue was worse. While taking a shower, I had to sit down halfway through, suddenly lightheaded. Looking back, I should have recognized these as warning signs, but years of conditioning had taught me to doubt myself and assume I was overreacting. By July 3rd, the pain in my leg had intensified, joined by a sharp pain in my chest with every deep breath. I wrapped my calf in an elastic bandage, took some over-the-counter pain relievers, and continued with the preparations. The voice in my head suggesting something might be seriously wrong was drowned out by the louder voice that sounded remarkably like my father calling me dramatic. On the morning of the 4th of July, I woke up feeling distinctly unwell. My breathing was shallow, as if I couldn't quite fill my lungs. The simple act of getting dressed left me dizzy. Still, I had guests to host. The family would be arriving in a few hours. I pushed through the discomfort, setting up tables and chairs in the backyard, hanging decorations. Each task took more effort than it should have, but I blamed it on stress and lack of sleep. By noon, I was moving in slow motion, but the yard looked festive. Sarah arrived early to help and frowned the moment she saw me. "You look terrible, Em. Are you okay?" "Just tired," I said automatically. We carried the heavy coolers of drinks outside, and a sudden sharp pain shot through my chest, so intense I nearly dropped my end. Sarah noticed my grimace. "Seriously, what's wrong?" she pressed. "Nothing. Probably pulled a muscle." I forced a smile, ignoring my racing heart. By 2 p.m., the guests began to arrive. Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane with their teenage kids, Dad's cousin Patrick with his new wife, and Grandma Walker, who was 86 but still sharp as a tack. With each arrival, I put on a brighter smile, ignoring the increasing tightness in my chest and the strange tingling in my fingers. Aunt Rose arrived last, as usual, and immediately scanned the decorations with a critical eye. "Well, Emily, you look awful. Are you trying to get attention again?" she said. "Nice to see you too, Aunt Rose," I replied, taking a casserole dish from her with hands that felt numb. "You should put some color on your face before joining the guests," she advised. "No one wants to look at someone half dead at a party." The irony of her words would only hit me much later. By the time we sat down to eat, I was struggling to maintain a facade of normalcy. The simple act of breathing had become a conscious effort. I picked up my food, unable to muster an appetite. Dad, of course, noticed. "I spent all this money on food, you could at least eat it," he muttered. I nodded and forced a bite into my mouth. As the plates were cleared and dessert was served, the pressure in my chest intensified. A sharp, stabbing pain shot through my right side, causing me to gasp audibly. "Bathroom," I murmured and unsteadily got up. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. My lips had a bluish tinge. My skin was pale and clammy, and my eyes were wide with fear. Something was very, very wrong.
When I returned to the backyard, I nearly stumbled, and Dad caught my arm. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone more annoyed than concerned. "Fine." The lie was automatic. After dessert, Dad announced, "Emily and Sarah will handle the cleanup." "I'll take care of it," Sarah said, quietly. "You look like you're about to pass out." "No," I insisted. "Dad will notice." In the kitchen, I started loading the dishwasher. The simple act of bending over sent waves of dizziness through me. The stack of plates in my hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. The crash of breaking dishes echoed through the kitchen. The noise brought Dad storming in. "What the hell, Emily? Those were your mother's plates." I tried to explain, but my lungs seemed to seize. I couldn't draw enough air to form words. "I can't breathe," I finally gasped. Dad rolled his eyes. "Stop faking it. Clean up this mess." Aunt Rose appeared behind him. "Really, Emily, we all know you've always tried to get out of cleanup duty." The edges of my vision began to darken. "She's not faking it," Sarah said, her voice trembling with alarm. "Look at her." "She's always like this," Dad dismissed. "Maybe we should call someone," suggested Uncle Robert, who had come into the kitchen. "I can't breathe," I repeated, gasping. The room was spinning. My legs gave out, and I slid to the floor amidst the broken shards. The pain in my chest was overwhelming.
"Enough!" Sarah shouted. "I'm calling 911. Look at her lips. They're blue." "Don't you dare," Dad warned. But Sarah was already dialing. "If you're wrong, you'll never hear the end of it," Aunt Rose said, but fear was now in her voice. My world had narrowed to the desperate struggle for air. Through the encroaching darkness, I heard Sarah's steady, clear voice speaking to the dispatcher. "My sister can't breathe. Yes, she's conscious, but barely. 25 years old." Then I heard my grandmother's voice. "Give her space." She knelt beside me with difficulty. "Help is on the way, child," she said. Time became fluid. I don't know how long I lay there, fighting for each breath, before the wail of sirens cut through the air. Paramedics rushed in. A young man checked my pulse, and his expression instantly changed. "Get the stretcher in here, now," he yelled to his partner. "Pulse is 140 and thready. O2 sats are critically low." Panic filled the room. Dad stood frozen, his face ashen. Aunt Rose backed against the wall, her hand over her mouth. As the paramedics fitted an oxygen mask over my face, I caught a glimpse of my father's expression. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes, and beneath it, the dawning horror of realization. He had been wrong, catastrophically, dangerously wrong. The last thing I remember was the wail of the sirens and the sensation of movement as they rushed me out of the house where I had never been believed. In the ambulance, consciousness came and went. Somehow, Sarah was there, holding my hand. "Hang on, Em," she kept saying. "Please, hang on." I tried to nod, but my body wouldn't respond. The struggle to breathe consumed all my energy.
At the hospital, it was a blur of bright lights, hurried footsteps, and new faces. 25-year-old female acute respiratory distress, tachycardic, hypotensive. A paramedic rattled off. Sarah was told to wait behind a set of double doors. "I'll be right outside, Em," she promised. A doctor, Dr. Winters, leaned over me. "Emily, can you hear me? We're going to take care of you." Monitors beeped, needles pricked my skin. "Get a CHEST stat and an ultrasound for her leg. O2 is still dropping. Start her on heparin. We'll have to intubate if her SATs don't improve in the next 2 minutes." Despite the pain and fear, a strange calm settled over me. These people believed me. They saw my distress and responded with appropriate alarm. After a lifetime of dismissal, the validation was almost as powerful as the oxygen they were pumping into my failing lungs. The ultrasound confirmed a deep vein thrombosis in my right leg. The CT scan revealed what the medical team already suspected: massive pulmonary embolism, critical condition. The words floated around me. A different mask was placed over my face, and a voice told me they needed to put me to sleep for a little while to help me breathe. Darkness claimed me. The next 12 hours are a blank. Sarah later told me I was intubated, given powerful blood thinners, and that a special catheter was threaded through my veins to break up the largest clot that was threatening my life. Dad arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later. He paced the waiting room, refusing to sit. When the doctor came out and used the words life-threatening and critical condition, he had to brace himself against a wall. Aunt Rose left, claiming the stress was too much for her heart.
The world returned to me slowly. First, the steady beeping of monitors, then the antiseptic smell of a hospital. Finally, the dull ache in my throat. I opened my eyes. Sarah was asleep in the chair beside me, still holding my hand. "Em," she whispered, waking up. "You're awake." "What happened?" I managed to rasp. "You had blood clots in your lungs, a pulmonary embolism. It was really bad, Em. They said if we had waited much longer to call..." She didn't need to finish. Dr. Winters explained that a blood clot from my leg had traveled and blocked the arteries in my lungs. "Your condition was critical. Without immediate intervention, the outcome would have been fatal." Fatal. The word hung in the air. I had been dying, and no one except Sarah had believed me until it was almost too late. Later, Sarah described how Dad had behaved at the hospital. "He looked like a ghost, Em. When the doctor said how serious it was, that you might not make it, he just slid to the floor right in the middle of the waiting room." When she asked if I wanted to see him, I shook my head. "Not yet." During the day, a nurse, explaining my pain medication, told me, "Many patients, especially women, underreport their pain. They've been conditioned to think they should tough it out. But pain is important information that helps us treat you." Her words resonated so deeply that I had to turn away to hide my tears. My entire life had taught me the opposite.
A week later, Dr. Winters suggested a family meeting. Dad, Sarah, Grandma, Uncle Robert, and, to my surprise, Aunt Rose gathered in my room. Dr. Winters laid out the facts in clear, unemotional terms. To be perfectly clear, without immediate medical intervention, Emily would have died. We're talking about a matter of hours, possibly less. The early symptoms should never be ignored or dismissed, she continued, her emphasis on the last word slight but unmistakable. "How were we supposed to know?" Dad finally asked, defensively. "You weren't expected to diagnose her, Mr. Walker," the doctor replied calmly. "But when someone says they can't breathe, believing them is a good first step." Something inside me shifted. "I told you I couldn't breathe," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "I told all of you, and you said I was faking. My whole life, every time I was hurt, you told me I was being dramatic. You taught me to ignore my own body. Do you know what it's like to grow up never being believed?
to be gasping for air and be accused of putting on a show?
Now, Emily, Aunt Rose began in her usual scolding tone. I almost died. I cut her off. She flushed, stood abruptly, and left the room. We're not mind readers, Emily, Dad said, but the authority was gone from his voice. You weren't supposed to be. You are supposed to believe me. Every time. That's what parents do. They believe their children when they say they're hurting. The words hung in the air. Dad walked to the window. It was Grandma who broke the silence. She's right, Michael. We failed her. Dad didn't turn around. I did what I thought was best. I was trying to teach you to be strong. Instead, you taught me to doubt myself, and it almost killed me. He had no answer. He walked out of the room without another word.
Uncle Robert shook his head. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, Emily. His apology, the first from any family member, brought tears to my eyes. That evening, Chloe arrived. They could have killed you with their denial, she said, furious on my behalf. You can't go back to your dad's. Move in with me. My second bedroom is empty. Her offer was a lifeline. 2 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of my new apartment. Sarah had moved in with me after getting a transfer to a nearby hospital. My recovery was slow but steady. I found a remote job. My relationship with my father remained complicated. He never explicitly apologized, but he stopped questioning my health complaints. I had no contact with Aunt Rose. One day, I ran into Dad at the grocery store. He looked older. I was wrong, he finally said. Not just about the embolism, about a lot of things. I thought I was teaching you to be tough. I didn't realize I was teaching you that your feelings didn't matter. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more than he had ever offered. I'm still angry, I told him honestly, but I appreciate you saying that. A few weeks later, Sarah had a bout of appendicitis. I rushed her to the ER without a second thought. As I sat by her hospital bed, I realized we had broken the cycle. The pattern set by our father would end with us. One evening, Aunt Rose called unexpectedly. She told me she was in therapy. I said some terrible things. I was wrong and I'm sorry. She told me my mother, whom I barely remembered, would have always believed me. She was a fierce advocate for her children.
My life settled into a new rhythm. Therapy, checkups, daily walks. The fear never vanished completely, but it receded. One day in a coffee shop, I overheard a young woman describing symptoms her family had dismissed as anxiety. I couldn't stop myself. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said. Please get those symptoms checked out, even if no one believes you. I briefly shared my story. Trust yourself, I told her. You know your body better than anyone. The pulmonary embolism had nearly taken my life, but in surviving, I had found freedom. The freedom to trust myself completely. No dismissal, no doubt, no criticism could shake that foundation now. And in that trust, I had found not just healing, but strength.